Hello folks. In recent months, Zamazenta has been seeing more and more usage. It's gotten pretty good. There's been a lot of discussion about if it should be banned or not. I just want to throw my hat into the ring, talk about it a little bit today, and that's what this video is about. And tomorrow I'll be doing a Zamazenta video, but today we're focusing on what Zamazenta is, why my street is so loud, and what are some possible checks and counters to it right now, and ultimately, is it broken? So let's just go over Zamazenta first. Zamazenta is a very good Pokemon. It has a BST of 660. It was ruled when home released. Zamazenta and its crown form were both released into OU. The crown form got banned somewhat quickly. The original form stayed. Dauntless Shield got nerfed so that you only get the defense raised by one stage once per battle rather than every switch in, which I think if that wasn't the case, if that nerf wasn't applied, then Zamazenta probably would overtly be broken and it wouldn't even be close. But because of its once per battle effect, Zamazenta is usually reserved for in-game sweeps, and its stats pretty much allow it to be perfect for that. It also got body press this generation, so you can use your defense stat as attack and damage calculation. So basically that +1 to your defense and 115 base defensive stat allow it to be very powerful with stab body press. So you also have crunch and heavy slam are usually your two attacking moves, if you run two attacking moves, that is. And of course almost every Zamazenta set uses iron defense as well. Crunch and heavy slam are good because they take care of your weaknesses, and your biggest weaknesses with using Zamazenta is ghost and fairies. Fairies because they hit Zamazenta back, and of course because they resist body press, and ghost because they completely go through body press, right? Yeah, you also Terra types, you can do Terra Steel or Terra Dark, just one of the two. Steel is really good, and I think that's the preferred option. It boosts your heavy slam damage, and it also turns all your weaknesses, which are psychic, flying, and fairy, into resistances, which is very good. Dark is also good because it helps against the Golden Go matchup. Crunch becomes a 2-hit KO with Terra Dark. Terra Dark also turns your psychic weakness into an immunity. Not that most people are using psychic moves against Zamazenta, but it is nice to have. So what are some options with Zamazenta if you don't like this set? According to Pikalytics, there are a few options you have. As we were talking about, body press and iron defense is pretty common on it, and so is crunch and heavy slam. But Roar has come into the fray as of late. Stone Edge is also a great option. It hits flying types. It's very strong. I'll zoom in a little bit for you guys so you guys can see this easier. Close combat's also good if you want to run an attacking set, because you do have slightly higher attack, even if you're not taking the +1 into consideration. If you want to use Zamazenta as more of an offensive attacker throughout the game rather than in-game sweep or close combat might be better. Substitute is a really annoying one though. And we'll get more into that later, but Substitute actually is a big reason why Zamazenta is a problem, because yes, Crunch and Heavy Slam are both necessary if you want to be an in-game sweeper, but Substitute can really throw a wrench in your opponent's game. And it's kind of the same reason why Kieran was banned last generation, just a little bit, because Sub really just messes up a lot of interactions and things you can do to counter Zamazenta for the entire game, so to speak. Choice Band Offensive. This is not a common set, but I do want to talk about it very briefly because it does highlight Zamazenta's deep move pool. You can also run Wild Charge on this thing for Pelipper or just other water types. Ice Fang is good for the Clodsire and for the Gliscor and the Landorus T matchup. You also have Fire Fang. You probably won't really be needing that because Fire Fang is usually used for steel types, and of course you have CC for that, close combat. It also has Play Rough and Psychic Fangs. Those two I don't see very often, but you can use them. Quick Attack's also an option that's not really seen a whole lot, but it is an option you can explore. I should mention this. My Zamazenta, this is the Zamazenta spread I'm using. 385 speed outspeeds Darkrai at max speed. This is not the standard Zamazenta spread. There's actually a million different Zamazenta spreads. There is, you can just look at them here. There's not really a coherent idea of what the superior spread is on it. I'm running this personally because 240 is a leftovers number because it is divisible by 16 plus 1. It's n divided by 16 plus 1, 384 divided by 16. What's my math here? 15, I think, plus 1. So 152 is actually a jump point too, which is really cool. And then I just put 56 in attack because I don't know. I felt that was right to help pick up. Actually, I know why I did 56. I'll explain that one later in this video. I'm actually going to jump cut this in to the Zamazenta intro part. First of all, let's just get into the counters and checks for Zamazenta. What are some of the counters? So I put the best OU counters here. I probably also should have included Gliscor on this list. I didn't, but Gliscor is another good option. I just want to get that out of the way first of all. So Clodsire is a great option. Of course, you do have to run Unaware though. You cannot be Water Absorb Clawed, or that body press is going to come and haunt you. Here's the problem though. If you're running Substitute on your Zamazenta, you can't outstall the Clodsire, but your Clodsire can't really do anything to Zamazenta either unless you want to get up a ton of spikes or unless you want to haze it for your switch-in. I'm putting haze on this right now because it goes through sub. It destroys iron defenses. The only problem with Clodsire versus Zamazenta, neither Pokemon, if you're running Terra Steel, you could even just run Terra Steel. You don't even need to run Substitute. And then Crunch doesn't, Earthquake, you just have to pray for a crit, right? The problem is with the Zamazenta v Clodsire matchup, neither Pokemon really makes progress in this scenario. So that's obviously a problem. You do have Amnesia, but I don't think Clodsire has any form to boost its physical defense. So unless maybe Harden actually. Nope, it doesn't even learn Harden. I thought it might have, but yeah. So Clodsire can't really make any progress against Zamazenta, which is tough. You can get spikes up, you can toxic it, assuming that it doesn't turn into a steel joint and assuming it doesn't have sub. You can also haze it, which is good for a switch in that can make progress against it. So that is good for that. Another counter is Dondozo. Dondozo is very good. Obviously, you're running Unaware on most Dondozos. And by most, I mean, you should always be running. If you're running Water Veil, I mean, Water Veil is actually not a terrible option. Oblivious can be useful too, but Unaware is ultimately your reason for running Dondozo, so you should be running Unaware on it. The good thing is, Dondozo actually can make progress against Zamazenta, and Zamazenta can't really do that much damage to Dondozo. Also, let me just show you guys the Clodsire couch real quick. Crunch, you could get a defense drop, which would effectively neuter Clodsire, because at -1, Clodsire starts taking a whole lot more from Crunch, which would be a problem. But yeah, Claude is also doing 18 to 22% back. And if you turn to a steel joint, assuming you don't have sub to avoid the toxic, then Earthquake is doing even more. Onto Dondozo. This is how much Body Press is doing 13 to 16% to Dondozo, whereas Waterfall does 18 to 22%. You can also set up with Dondozo now because Curse, through your cursing and getting Waterfall boost, you go through Zamazenta's defense boost because you're unaware of them. So that is a good part of Dondozo as well. You can set up so you can make progress. You can become an in-game sweeper with Dondozo against Zamazenta, which effectively forces the Zamazenta out, which could effectively end its sweep for the entire game because it loses that Dauntless Shield boost. Slowking. Slowking's really good because you can, obviously you have Psychic Stab. You can Thunder Wave it, assuming it's not running Substitute, of course. You can go for Sludge Bomb poisonings if you really want to, but Psychic is really all you need. And even with no special attack investment, Psychic is doing 48 to 57. So it's sometimes a 2-hit KO after Leftovers recovery. And yeah, very good answer because you do take a lot from Crunch. That is the concern with it. So you would have to switch it on Body Press, which is kind of risky because otherwise Crunch does have a very, very, very small chance of 2-hit KOing. But if you can bring Slowking in, it can be a good counter to it. Okay, on to the next counter. We got Landorus. Landorus Therian is very good because it's just a good Pokemon in general, but especially because it has Intimidate. so Zamazenta can't use Crunch or Heavy Slam against it, and it also allows other Pokemon to come in against the Crunch and Heavy Slam because Zamazenta almost never runs Howl. That's like not a real set at all, and honestly, if it is, you know what, props to you, I guess. I'm pretty sure Landorus Therian defense is actually this set specifically to counter Zamazenta, because you do have Taunt to stop it from Iron Defensing up. You also have Earth Power to hit its special defensive rather than Earthquake, despite the fact that you do have base 40 more in attack rather than special attack. You also can get some progress with Landorus because Stealth Rock gets up, and Rocky Helmet, of course, punishes Zamazenta from going for that very pesky body press, because let's say you're at plus, you've used Iron Defense twice. Body press is effectively 2-hit KOing, but with Earth Power and Rocky Helmet chip, you're effectively doing 40% per turn at worst. So you're outputting exactly the same amount of damage as inputting. Also, because you do get that Intimidate off, it should allow you to bring in one of your other checks or counters to it, which could be Golden Go or Dragapult. So yeah, we have one more counter, and Golden Go is probably the weakest counter here because Crunch actually does 3-hit KO it somewhat comfortably, assuming you're running that 56 attack spread that I talked about earlier in the vid. You have a 12% chance of KO. Okay, so it's not great. It's not obvious. It's not a great chance of KO. And Shadow Ball doesn't do that much either. And honestly, with Golden Go, you effectively have to run Thunder Wave to make it slower, or else you run some risk of, you could run Hex instead of Shadow Ball. Actually, you probably would rather run Hex rather than Shadow Ball. We'll assume that for this purpose that you are now paralyzed. And now Hex is going first, even with 0 special attack. It's a very comfortable 3-hit KO. And by comfortable, I mean it is a guaranteed 3-hit KO against it. And then you're obviously moving before it, so you're beating it to the crunches. The only reason Golden Go is a risky one is because if you get a Crunch defense drop, you're effectively screwed. And we can see here, -1 Crunch is effective, is even sometimes slightly a 2-hit KO. So it's not the most reliable counter. It's probably more considered a check, to be honest, but I want to throw it out there because you can do that if you want to. Something else tricky though that I should mention with Golden Go is if you are running 240 speed and you are running 0 speed with Golden Go actually still gets outsped even if you are paralyzed with Golden Go. That's not really, I've never seen a Golden Go run 0 speed. And if you are, you're probably running max Fizz Def anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And also that means you're probably running 0 attack investment with Zamazenta, which means Crunch is even weaker. So that's really not a huge deal, but I figured I should mention it because it is an important interaction to note of that. Yes, Zamazenta can outspeed Golden Go even if it's Thunder Wave. So there's three checks I wanted to mention as well. Because they're really good. They are very good Pokemon. They're good checks. Starting off with Dragapult. Dragapult has seen a weird shift in Scarlet and Violet, going from a Specs attacker to a mixed boots attacker, which is really interesting. And Dragapult has a very good ability of Infiltrator, and this is very important because it effectively does not care if Zamazenta is that substitute set or not, which is really good because that means you get guaranteed Will-O-Wisp. Or if you run, well, I shouldn't replace U-Turn. If you run Thunder Wave instead, you get guaranteed Thunder Waves, and that is an option you have with Dragapult. Hex does double damage on it as well, and we can see from the calcs that if you are burned with Zamazenta, Crunch is a guaranteed for a KO, which isn't great, but you can effectively beat it with Hex because Hex is a guaranteed 3-hit KO. So because you are outspeeding Zamazenta and you are outputting more damage, you can beat Zamazenta with Dragapult in a 1v1 scenario if Dragapult can get in safely. That's the important kicker because it is a check, it's not a counter. But this is very good because it effectively nullifies the substitute set. Substitute does not care about Infiltrator does not care about substitutes feelings, so it's very good for that. Deoxys is another good option. Deoxys speed outspeeds it very, very comfortably. And you actually, with a life orb, you can one-hit KO pretty comfortably, actually, or OHKO, I should say, as all the nerds say. You can OHKO Zamazenta. I don't even think you need that much special attack investment. Okay, you might need some special attack. At 100 attack investment, you're still 75% chance to OHKOing it after making sure that you get through the accuracy check, of course, which is pretty good, honestly. And Deoxys is good too because you can still superpower a knockoff on the switch in, whatever your opponent brings in afterwards, so that special attack drop isn't the end of the world. But yeah, if Psycho Boost connects and you're running that 252 special attack, you do guaranteed kill it, which is really good. Again, as long as you can get it safely. And then Iron Valiant is very good because of two things. One, Encore, and two, Stab Moonblast. The only problem with Iron Valiant is you do get, well, you're not burned now. You do get 2-hit KO'd by Heavy Slam, so you can't really mess around that much. But because of Encore being possibly the worst move ever, which is a lie, it's possibly the best move ever. And because you outspeed Zamazenta, you can get an Encore off if Zamazenta went for an Iron Defense or a Substitute the prior turn, or even Roar the prior turn. Could be a potential option to Encore. And then Moonblast is a guaranteed 2-hit KO, which is very good. Unless they substitute and you bring it in on the sub and you don't click Encore for some reason, but you would never do that. You could also get Greedy and Calm Mind up, and then Moonblast is, well, hold on. Quark Drive is still selecting speed. So actually, that's crazy. So you can get Greedy on Zamazenta actually, and assuming they're not behind a sub, that is, you can boost your special attack by 1 and then Moonblast kill it. And that would help against, and it might help against other Pokemon that are potentially going to come in. But you can get Greedy with Iron Valiant. The problem with Iron Valiant is if you exhaust your Quark Drive, you are no longer faster than Zamazenta. Zamazenta is always just going to double Heavy Slam and kill you. And if it's behind a sub, then all Iron Valiant is really doing is breaking a sub, and Zamazenta is getting a net like 12% back in leftovers. So it's not the greatest answer. So now that we got the checks and counters out of the way, I'm going to talk about my thoughts on Zamazenta. So first of all, its usage rate has been going well. Before I get on my thoughts, I want to talk about the objective the objective facts, excuse me. And that is that Zamazenta is now the number 4 most used Pokemon in OU after May. So that's pretty huge. Number 4 usage, which is a lot, which it was number 12 after April. So it jumped from 12 to 4. Peakalytics for the 1500 plus has Zamazenta as a, well, where the numbers go? Where the numbers go? Where the numbers? There we go. At a 13% usage and the number 12 most used ranking. But that's for 1500 plus. The craziest thing is when you get to 1825 plus on the ladder, and Zamazenta is actually more used than Great Tusk at a 24% usage rate, which is kind of insane to me. Now with those objective facts out of the way, what are my thoughts on Zamazenta? I've been seeing more and more Zamazenta on the ladder, and it is so damn good and annoying to fight against. The main reason is this kind of the same reason with King Gambit, except a little different because King Gambit has Sucker Punch and it's just different, right? Zamazenta comes in, it's an Iron Defense body press simulator. It turns into an Iron Defense body press simulator basically every time Zamazenta comes in, which is fine. Some Pokemon are like that, but Zamazenta is really annoying because it is so damn fast. It doesn't even need to put the most into speed. It doesn't really matter because you're faster than Darkrai even at just 152. So you can invest into other stats as well. You don't even need to fully invest in defense because Iron Defense is so good for getting, and Dauntless Shield too, of course, and getting your defense up. And you don't need that full investment in defense, so it allows you to invest in HP and attack. This mon is bulky as hell. It's strong as hell. And it's really hard, especially if you exhaust your counters and checks by the end of the game, to actually do something against it. And that's the biggest problem with it. The other thing is, of course, Terra. Terra helps everyone. Of course, it helps with, it helps in defense, it helps in offense, but Zamazenta's Terra Steel is very annoying. And Zamazenta is one of many Terra users who have a snowball effect with their Terra. In other words, you Terra, all you need to do is buy yourself one turn with that Terra, and you effectively have won the game just by buying one extra turn. It's the same thing we saw with Volcarona Quiver Dancing. You just need to buy that one turn to click the QD button, and all of a sudden, you've actually bought yourself 2 turns, because not only is your opponent maybe has a bad Pokemon into your new typing, now they have to switch out. So that's 2 turns now. You bought the first turn because your opponent clicked a button assuming you were a fighting type, and now your opponent has to switch in new Pokemon because their first Pokemon doesn't have anything to touch you since you're now a Steel type. So that's a big problem with it. These snowball Pokemon these Terra Snowballers are a very, very big problem. And not everyone in a very hyper offensive meta, which Scarlet and Violet OU is, it's very hard to justify having multiple walls on your team, aka having 2 Claudes and having a Claude and a Dawn, or having a Dawn and a Slowking, or having all 3 of them. I've seen that too, because Stall is still a play style, albeit a very small percentage of the player base actually uses it right now because hyper offense is so freaking good. And you can't always just have these Pokemon in the back. You have one Clodsire on your team. Well, guess what? Clodsire is going to be doing a lot more than just countering Zamazenta. I guarantee it. Iron Valiant. Sometimes you need to bring that in early, so it can't always be a check to Zamazenta. Dragapult, I would say, is a little bit different because Dragapult easily can come in multiple times a game, and it's fast enough that you can justify that. And because there's not really a factor with Dragapult like there is with Zamazenta or Iron Valiant, or even your defensive guys, because your counters are effectively coming in on attacks, which is somewhat exhausting their HP, and you exhaust momentum too if you take the extra turn to recover rather than predict your opponent switching into something else. Anyway, I'm maybe getting too much into the weeds of it. My overall thoughts on Zamazenta is that it's very, 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 very strong, and it definitely probably should get a suspect test. Probably immediately, because I don't think OU is suspecting anything right now. I know we've done a lot of suspect tests over the past few months, but Zamazenta needs to be done sooner than later. I think it's the biggest problem in OU right now, other than King Gambit, but they're never going to take action against King Gambit. It's already been suspect tested and it's passed it, so I don't think King Gambit will get any action on it. But I think Zamazenta needs to get a suspect test probably as soon as possible. I say suspect test rather than outright ban is one, because democracy, not to be the fuck democracy guy, but also it's not overtly broken enough that I think it just needs to be quick ban from the council. Simultaneously, I think if you ban Zamazenta, King Gambit starts running amok a whole lot harder. King Gambit was so freaking good before Zamazenta came out. Zamazenta is a very, 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 very good check to King Gambit. Let me explain this one real quick. Let me get out of here. King Gambit, OU offensive, right? So say you're just at your standard +0. You're bringing in Ironhead at most. Let's say all 5 of your guys have died, right? Ironhead at most is doing 32 to 38%. That is barely anything, and you can bring in Zamazenta on King Gambit very easily, and then you can boost your defense up. Let's say you've clicked Iron Defense once up. Now Ironhead is barely doing any damage. Possible 6-hit KO after recovery. So let's say you turn into a flying joint. Maybe you want to be a flying guy, right? So body press is still doing 31 to 37%, which is still a lot. So you can effectively defense up on it faster than King Gambit can do damage. Also, Sucker Punch, it resists Sucker Punch, so King Gambit will never be able to hit Zamazenta faster. Also, this means King Gambit your opponent has to save Terra for the end game, just to not immediately get absolutely obliterated off the face of the earth by body press. So I do think that it's not a slippery slope, but it's something that should be considered, that King Gambit could easily spiral out of control. if Zamazenta is banned, because Zamazenta is one of King Gambit's best counters in the game right now. So that's my thoughts on Zamazenta. Overall, probably needs to assess overall very good Pokemon, very deep move pool, needs a suspect test. Utility on this thing is insane. Stats on this thing are insane. Needs a suspect test. If it does get a suspect test, I hope the voters realize what banning this thing could do, even though I myself would probably vote in favor of banning it. So yeah, that's my thoughts, but let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. That would end up being a 25-minute yap sesh. Wow. But I'm done talking. I'll talk to you guys in the comments, so of course, but this is going to be the end of the video. Let me know your thoughts and comments down below. I've been loving the discussion on some of my recent videos lately. Please keep it up. Love you all. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video. Have a great rest of your day. Peace.